A woman is drawn to the man who walks away because he shows strength, self-respect, and emotional control. His absence reveals his value, his silence exposes her intentions, and his distance breaks the cycle of chasing. Walking away makes him rare, unforgettable, and the one she can no longer ignore. Walking away is one of the strongest silent statements a person can make, and its power becomes undeniable when it comes from a place of self-respect. When you choose to walk away, you're not rejecting someone, you're choosing yourself. You're declaring that you will not stay in spaces where you are not valued, heard, or prioritized. This kind of inner strength is magnetic because it is rare. Most people hold on out of fear, fear of losing someone, fear of being alone, fear of not finding something better. But the one who walks away shows he is driven by principles, not by panic. His decision comes from clarity, not chaos, and that kind of strength commands attention. Walking away signals that your emotional stability is not dependent on someone else's presence or approval. It shows that you are capable of detaching from what disrupts your peace, even if your heart wants to stay. A woman feels this strength deeply because it shows that you are not controlled by your feelings. You are guided by your standards. You're not the man who crumbles when faced with distance or uncertainty. You are the man who stands tall, even when the easiest thing would be to hold on. This kind of emotional discipline is incredibly attractive because it communicates maturity. It shows that you don't allow your life to be dictated by someone else's inconsistency. Walking away doesn't mean you didn't care. It means you cared enough about yourself to refuse to settle for anything less than honesty, respect, and reciprocity. It means that you've reached a point where your worth is no longer up for negotiation. And when a woman sees this, it wakes something in her. She realizes that your presence was a privilege, not a guarantee. She feels the shift in energy. Suddenly, you're not the man who's waiting, hoping, or chasing. You're the man who knows his value and refuses to stay where he is not fully appreciated. That shift shakes her because it's uncommon, it's powerful, and it forces her to reflect. When you walk away, you reclaim control of your emotions, your direction, and your identity. You remind yourself that you have options, that you are not trapped, and that your life does not revolve around someone else's choices. The world respects those who respect themselves, and nothing demonstrates self-respect more clearly than the ability to leave when a situation no longer aligns with your dignity. A woman is drawn to this because it creates emotional polarity. She sees a man who isn't desperate for validation, who isn't afraid of losing her, who isn't willing to bend himself to keep the peace. That confidence shifts the dynamic. Inner strength isn't loud. It doesn't need to prove itself. It's quiet, steady, and unwavering. And when you walk away with that kind of energy, it speaks louder than anything you could ever say. It shows that you're not afraid of letting go because you believe in what you deserve, and that belief is irresistibly powerful. Valuing yourself above the relationship isn't about ego, pride, or superiority. It's about understanding that your identity, your peace, and your standards come before any connection, no matter how deep. When a man holds this mindset, it changes everything. He doesn't cling to someone out of loneliness. He doesn't bend his boundaries to avoid conflict, and he doesn't tolerate behavior that chips away at his self-worth. He stands firm in the belief that losing himself is far more damaging than losing a relationship. And that energy is powerful. It tells the other person that access to him is earned through respect, consistency, and honesty, not through emotional manipulation or temporary affection. When he values himself, he knows that staying in a situation where he is overlooked, dismissed, or taken for granted is not love. It's self-abandonment. And he simply won't choose that. A woman feels this deeply. She notices the difference between a man who fears losing her and a man who fears losing himself. The first one gives away his power, the second one protects it. And power is attractive. Not the forceful, aggressive kind, but the quiet, grounded self-respect that cannot be shaken by someone's moods or mixed signals. A man who values himself doesn't react impulsively to distance or silence. He doesn't chase validation. He observes the behavior and responds with wisdom. If someone pulls away, he doesn't panic. He recalibrates. If someone disrespects him, he doesn't argue. He removes himself. If someone takes him for granted, he doesn't plead. He becomes unavailable. Not to punish, but because he refuses to betray himself by staying where he's not fully valued. His actions come from a place of emotional intelligence and clarity. This kind of man becomes someone a woman cannot easily forget because he shows her something rare, a presence that cannot be bought with sweet words, temporary affection, or inconsistent effort. He shows that he isn't afraid of being alone because he understands that solitude with self-respect is better than companionship without it. He shows that he isn't desperate for attention because he already validates himself. He shows that he doesn't need her to choose him in order to feel whole because he is already rooted in his own identity. When he values himself above the relationship, he naturally raises the standard. The dynamic shifts. She realizes that if she wants to keep him, she has to show up with the same level of respect and effort. She can't coast on potential or excuses. She must meet him where he stands. And if she doesn't, he will walk away without anger, without drama, and without bitterness, because he knows that letting go is better than holding on to something that requires him to shrink. A man who chooses himself first becomes undeniable. His silence carries weight. His boundaries create clarity, and his presence feels like privilege. Because when you truly value yourself, you don't fight to be chosen. You allow the wrong ones to walk away and the right ones to rise to your level. His absence has a way of illuminating truths that were invisible in his presence. When he steps back, not out of spite, not as a strategy, but as a response to being taken for granted, it forces a kind of emotional silence that reveals everything she couldn't see before. In his presence, his effort felt normal. His consistency felt expected. His availability felt guaranteed. But the moment he withdraws, even slightly, she begins to notice the spaces he used to fill, the stability he brought, and the comfort she didn't realize she depended on. His absence becomes a mirror that reflects both his value and her behavior with startling clarity. When a man is always there, always giving, always showing up, it's easy for someone to assume he'll never leave. She may not consciously take advantage of him, but familiarity can blur appreciation. His presence becomes routine. His effort becomes background noise. But when he steps away, even for his own peace, she is suddenly confronted with the truth. He mattered more than she allowed herself to admit. His absence turns into a contrast, a space that highlights how much lighter or heavier her life feels without him in it. This clarity isn't only emotional, it's psychological. Distance activates reflection. When she can no longer rely on his reassuring messages, his steady presence, or his emotional support, she is forced to ask herself difficult questions. Did she value him or just his availability? Did she appreciate him or just assume he would stay no matter how she treated him? Did she contribute effort or expect him to carry the emotional weight alone? These questions don't arise when he's around. They surface when he's gone. His absence creates the silence she needs to finally hear her own truth. For him, absence is not a tactic but a boundary. It's the consequence of being overlooked. It's the decision to give himself space to breathe, think, and redirect his energy back into himself. And that in itself is powerful, because when a man stops chasing, stops over-explaining, stops trying to convince someone of his worth, the dynamic shifts. She feels the change, she feels the pullback, and suddenly the connection doesn't feel as secure as she assumed it was. The clarity his absence creates is also about contrast. Without him, she recognizes the difference between attention and intention, between comfort and consistency, between someone who fills her time and someone who elevates her life. She realizes that the way he listened, supported, understood, and stood by her was not ordinary, it was rare. And rare things become even more valuable when they're no longer in reach. Absence has a unique emotional gravity. It doesn't push, it pulls, it doesn't demand, it reveals. And when he steps back, it becomes undeniably clear. He wasn't just another presence. He was a grounding force, a stabilizing energy, a man whose value grows louder in silence. His absence doesn't create distance, it creates truth. And truth is impossible to ignore. Emotional control is one of the rarest qualities a man can possess. And because it's so rare, it becomes deeply attractive. Not because he is cold or detached, but because he doesn't let his emotions dictate his behavior. He feels everything. He just doesn't let those feelings drown him or distort his judgment. In a world where most people react impulsively, cling out of fear, or crumble under pressure, a man who responds instead of reacts stands out immediately. His presence feels steady, grounded, and trustworthy. He's the type of man who can handle conflict without exploding, distance without panicking, and silence without losing himself. That kind of composure creates a sense of safety, a sense of respect, and a sense of strength she can feel even when he says nothing. A woman naturally gravitates toward this energy because emotional control is a sign of inner mastery. It shows her he isn't ruled by insecurity or impulsivity. His decisions come from clarity, not chaos. He doesn't chase validation, he doesn't beg to be chosen, and he doesn't allow his emotions to push him into desperation. Instead, he stands firmly in his truth. And this stability is magnetic. When a man has emotional control, he doesn't overreact to her moods, her silence, or her tests. He listens, observes, and responds with intention, not fear. That calmness is powerful. It shows her that he can handle the emotional storms without losing himself in them. This kind of emotional leadership creates polarity in a relationship. It draws her in because she senses his strength at a deeper level. When he stays collected, it signals that he knows who he is. He knows what he stands for. And he will not let emotions, his or hers, dictate the direction of his life. That certainty becomes something she can trust, something she can respect, something she can feel safe with. A man who can regulate his emotions isn't easily manipulated or thrown off balance. He doesn't crumble under pressure and he doesn't fall apart when things get uncertain. Instead, he becomes even more grounded. Emotional control also makes him unpredictable in the best way. Not because he is inconsistent, but because he doesn't respond the way most people do. When others might lash out, he stays calm. When others might chase, he steps back. When others might argue, he simply walks away. This creates a sense of mystery that draws her in. She wants to understand how he remains so composed, how he stays so centered, how he holds himself together without shutting his heart down. That fascination becomes attraction. And here is the real reason emotional control is so attractive. It shows that he belongs to himself. His mind, his heart, and his reactions are not controlled by external forces. He leads himself. He grounds himself. He chooses his responses with intention, not emotion. And a man who belongs to himself is a man worth following, worth valuing, and worth respecting. His emotional control doesn't make him distant. It makes him powerful. And power, when expressed with calmness and integrity, is irresistible. Scarcity has a psychological power that most people underestimate. When something or someone is always available, always present, always giving, the mind naturally starts to take it for granted. Not because the person isn't valuable, but because human nature becomes comfortable with abundance. But the moment that abundance is removed, everything changes. Scarcity ignites awareness. When a man steps back, becomes less accessible, or stops pouring his energy into someone who hasn't been appreciating it, his value rises instantly, not because he changed, but because she finally sees what she was overlooking. Scarcity increases desire because it disrupts emotional complacency. When he was always there, she assumed he always would be. She didn't have to think twice, didn't have to reciprocate effort, didn't have to question her own behavior. But the moment he becomes scarce, emotionally, mentally, or physically, she feels the shift. She notices the silence that wasn't there before. She feels the absence of his attention. She misses the energy he used to bring. That lack becomes a spotlight on everything she once ignored, and suddenly she realizes he wasn't just present, he was offering something meaningful, grounding, and rare. People value what feels limited. It's why the most precious things in life are scarce. Loyalty, consistency, authenticity, emotional stability. When a man embodies these traits and then steps away, the contrast becomes undeniable. She recognizes that what he gave can't be easily replaced. His patience, his understanding, his effort, his presence, these were not ordinary. And now that she doesn't have them, they become magnified in her mind. The scarcity forces her to reevaluate her own behavior. Was she giving as much as she was receiving? Was she appreciating him or simply expecting him? Was she genuinely investing or just assuming he'd never leave? Scarcity also reveals strength. A man who can reduce his availability shows that he isn't dependent on someone's attention for his identity. He isn't waiting around hoping to be chosen. He isn't afraid to create distance if something isn't right. That self-respect makes him even more desirable because desire is not built on neediness, it's built on value. When he becomes scarce, he shows that his time, energy, and presence are not unlimited. They are reserved for people who reciprocate, respect, and appreciate, and that boundary shifts the dynamic immediately. This scarcity doesn't come from manipulation, it comes from self-awareness. He steps back when he realizes he's giving more than he's receiving. He becomes scarce when his peace is compromised. He creates distance when he sees his effort is going unnoticed. This kind of absence isn't a tactic, it's a reflection of his standards, and nothing intensifies desire more than someone who refuses to lower their standards for the sake of staying. Scarcity creates desire because it forces recognition. It makes her see his worth without him having to prove it. It makes her understand that he's not endlessly available. And it makes her confront the truth. A man who values himself enough to become scarce is a man whose presence is worth wanting, chasing, and holding on to. He breaks the cycle of chasing the moment he realizes that pursuit without reciprocity is a form of self-betrayal. When a man stops chasing, it isn't because he lost interest, it's because he finally recognized that the dynamic was imbalanced. He sees that he has been the one initiating, the one holding the emotional weight, the one trying to prove his worth to someone who wasn't meeting him halfway. And instead of continuing the exhausting cycle of trying to be enough, he steps back. He lets the silence speak. He lets the distance reveal the truth. This shift is powerful because it changes everything about the connection. It forces alignment rather than effort. It creates clarity instead of confusion. When he stops chasing, he breaks the pattern that kept her comfortable. She was used to him reaching out, fixing things, smoothing the rough edges, and making sure the bond stayed intact. But once he stops doing that, she is confronted with a reality she didn't expect. The relationship doesn't hold itself together. He was the glue. He was the consistency. He was the reason things never fully fell apart. And without his pursuit, the entire dynamic changes. She now has to decide whether the connection matters enough to her to step forward or whether she was simply enjoying the attention without truly appreciating the man behind it. Breaking the cycle of chasing is an act of emotional maturity. It shows that he understands the difference between effort and overcompensation. He realizes that chasing someone who gives nothing in return doesn't deepen love. It destroys self-respect. It drains confidence, creates resentment, and reinforces a message he refuses to accept, that he must work twice as hard just to be seen. By stepping away, he breaks the subconscious belief that he must earn love. Instead, he honors himself by allowing the energy to rebalance. He gives her the space to show her true intentions. If she steps toward him, he knows the connection was mutual. If she does nothing, he has his answer without another word. This shift also restores his emotional power. When he chases, he operates from fear, the fear of losing her, the fear of being replaced, the fear of not being chosen. But when he stops, he acts from strength. He regains control of himself, his energy, and his direction. He stops reacting to distance and starts responding to reality. That calm, grounded stance becomes magnetic because chasing is rooted in anxiety, but stepping back is rooted in self-worth, and self-worth is always more attractive than desperation. When he breaks the cycle, he shows her a version of him she hasn't seen before. The man who doesn't need her attention to feel valuable. The man who doesn't crumble when she pulls away. The man who has options, purpose, and inner stability. And this is where everything shifts. Suddenly, she is the one thinking, questioning, and reevaluating. His absence becomes a mirror that reveals her own behavior. His silence becomes the space where she finally realizes what he was offering all along. He breaks the cycle of chasing, not to teach her a lesson, but to protect his soul. And in that moment of protection, he becomes the man she cannot ignore. Walking away has a clarity that words often cannot achieve. When a man steps back, he removes all the noise, the constant messaging, the chasing, the efforts to please, and what remains is truth. Distance has a way of exposing intentions, not just his own, but hers as well. In the presence of someone who constantly seeks attention or approval, it's easy to hide motivations, mask feelings, or avoid difficult questions. But when he walks away, all illusions begin to fade. His absence becomes a mirror, reflecting not only what he values, but also what she truly feels about him. A man who walks away is not afraid to see the reality of a relationship. He understands that presence alone cannot measure loyalty, love, or commitment. It is through absence that authenticity emerges. When he is no longer immediately available, it forces her to step into her own truth. If she genuinely cares, she will make the effort to reach him, to communicate, to show that she values him. If she does not, her indifference becomes obvious. Walking away strips away pretenses. It removes the comfort of complacency. It reveals whether attachment was genuine or simply convenient. His actions speak louder than words because walking away is the ultimate demonstration of boundaries. It says, without needing to explain, that his worth is non-negotiable. He will not beg, manipulate, or compromise his principles to be chosen. That stance forces her to examine her own priorities. It forces her to ask herself, do I want him enough to show it? Often, this is a revelation. Many realize only in his absence how much he contributed to their life, not just emotionally, but as a steady, grounding force. His withdrawal exposes whether her feelings were surface level or deeply rooted. Walking away also eliminates the illusions of control. When a man is constantly available, she may unconsciously assume she holds the power in the dynamic. But when he steps back, the power shifts back to him. This shift does not come from aggression or manipulation. It comes from self-respect and clarity. By choosing himself over the need to maintain appearances, he demonstrates that he is guided by his values, not by fear of loss. And this demonstration is magnetic because it awakens desire, curiosity, and introspection in a woman who may have taken his presence for granted. The beauty of walking away lies in its simplicity and authenticity. It is not about punishment or proving a point. It is about truth. It removes illusions, forces reflection, and reveals what was hidden beneath comfort, routine, and expectation. When he steps back, it is an invitation, not a threat, for both sides to confront the reality of the relationship. Her true intentions surface, his boundaries are respected, and clarity emerges. Walking away exposes the heart, the intentions, and the priorities of both individuals in a way that no argument, no pleading, and no reasoning ever could. It is the purest test of authenticity, and in that truth, both attraction and respect are either strengthened or revealed for what they truly are. In the end, the man who walks away is not distant out of anger or detachment. He steps back out of clarity, self-respect, and unwavering inner strength. His actions reveal value, boundaries, and emotional maturity, creating space for truth to surface. In that absence, she sees what she truly feels, what she truly values, and who he really is. Walking away is not rejection. It is a declaration of self-worth, a test of authenticity, and a powerful demonstration that love and respect must be mutual. It is this rare combination of strength, patience, and emotional control that draws her in, awakens desire, and commands genuine admiration. Ultimately, a man who can walk away becomes unforgettable, magnetic, and deeply respected, not because he chases, but because he honors himself above all else.